I'm here today to talk to you, as Guido said, I suppose, a little, why BPM is so important. Not that there's nothing else in the world, of course, there are other things. There are cats and things like that. But BPM is super, super important. And what I really want to do in the next few minutes is maybe help you to think a bit differently about why BPM is important. Let me just start off by explaining a little bit about me. I won't spend too long on this, but it's maybe useful. So I have two main jobs, really. Firstly, I'm an industry researcher focused on BPM and work automation and work coordination, so also case management, business rules, other technologies like this. And I've been doing that for now 20 years, which may be too long now, because, of course, you see so many fashions come and go. And I also have another job, which is I work across our whole company's research program, trying to make sure that it's properly set. And the goal of our overall research program is looking at how digital technologies are changing the ways that organizations can work and that people can work and deliver value to the shareholders, to customers, and so on. Okay, so this is a big role. Before that, I was actually a developer. Yeah, I had a real job, and you can tell how long ago it was because it's got C++ written on there. So, and I also worked for Deloitte Consulting for a while, helping organizations figure out how to make changes with technology. And when I'm not at work, I play in a band, and I'm left-handed, so that means if I buy a guitar, I have to spend an extra 20% every time. And I'm also leading Scouts operation in the UK. So quite busy, but the important things, I suppose, are digital technologies and then also how work automation and coordination are so important. So I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm going to talk about what's really going on in this world where we see lots and lots of organizations say, yeah, digital transformation, that's what we want to do. That's where we want to go. I'm going to explain a bit about what we really see, and in my work directing our research, I do a lot of interviews and workshops with CIOs, CTOs, and chief digital officers. And this is really where a lot of my presentation comes from, is those workshops. I'm trying to understand when people say, yeah, digital transformation, what do they actually mean? What does it actually mean? Yeah, it's easy to say, yeah, cool, digital transformation, yeah. But how do you really make that happen? What's really involved? Then we're going to talk about why BPM is so important in this context. So, first, it's easy to think, actually, you know what, it's just hype. It'll go away, yeah. And if we just wait long enough, we don't need to worry. I don't think this is the case, but it is complicated. And the difficult thing for us to explain when we work with clients is what is digital transformation for one client is not the same as what digital transformation is for another client. It's not, there's not one recipe you can follow and you will get to your destination. There's not one path. So let's talk a little bit about that. It's real. This is absolutely a real thing. Yeah, it's not fake, it's not hype. And this is just one example. This is focused, this slide is more UK focused, but I think it's really happening everywhere. And this is, of course, focused on banking, particularly consumer banking. But again, there's examples in many, many industries. But I want to show you a few things on this slide. The first is a website of one of our very big banks, HSBC. And it's the homepage of their website. And of course, on the homepage of their website, they highlight all the different products they offer you. Yeah? So, your everyday account for your house expenses and so on, and they will lend you money, and you can invest, and you can buy insurance, and you can change your money for different currencies and so on. And then around the edge, we have all the new digital startups who are competing against the big players in just one area or two areas. So you have new digital startups moving very, very fast, really unbundling the bank, breaking open all the services a bank offers and just focusing on one service. Maybe it's transfer, money transfer across countries, or currency exchange, or lending. Yeah, and you can see this is very, very active area. So that's one thing, is new digital startups. But there's actually more to it than that. On the right here, you also have new banks, challenger banks starting up in the UK, yeah? Handelsbanken, for example, now in the UK, able to enter new markets much more quickly because of new technologies. And we also have competitors from outside the industry. And you can see at the bottom, I've just given some names of our supermarkets. Our supermarkets, now not just offering a credit card, but also offering your everyday banking account, and insurance, and loans, and even sometimes mortgages to buy houses. So we're seeing a lot of threat to established players, not only in financial services, but this is a good example. And really, the bigger picture here is that it's creating chaos. Digital technologies are creating chaos. I'm not going to talk a lot about every detail of this. It's just really to say that we see feedback, really important feedback loops happening across multiple industries. It's this new technology everywhere it's changing the nature of competition. We see new competitors coming from unexpected places around the world, faster and faster. We see companies across all sectors, banking, insurance, retail, leisure, travel, media, and so on, all telling us we can't just compete based on our product. We can't just compete based on our price. We have to think about how we deliver a great customer experience. And this is driving up, of course, expectations of customers, and there's feedback loops everywhere. So we're seeing faster and faster change. But this is where it gets interesting. When we run these workshops, we say, okay, so everybody tells us that digital transformation is really important and this is where we want to go. But what do you mean? And depending on who you ask, you get a very different answer. Of course, the first thing that often people say is, yeah, well, it's like Airbnb, or it's like Uber. And I know here in Germany, there's some interesting dynamics there with services like Uber. But it's not just about that. That's one small piece of the picture. Actually, you can see here, different groups of people tend to have different ideas about what this means. If we talk to marketing people and we say, what does digital mean to you? They say, well, it's really about the customer experience. It's about omni-channel experiences. So people being able to work with us across mobile, Facebook, our website, in our stores, in our call center. It's about more personalized services and web pages. When you talk to strategy people, they talk about Uber, Airbnb, they talk about new digital business models where actually you're really using the resources of a community or a customer base to drive a product. You're creating platforms and networks using new digital technologies. When you talk to operations people, of course, they're talking about, yeah, digital for us means making our operations more efficient, means instrumenting our infrastructure, our networks, getting better insight into how our operations are working and making changes faster so we can prevent problems. And when you talk to communications people, HR people, they're talking about how social and mobile technologies are so important to drive employee engagement. And they're all right. They're all correct. But they're not all the same. Yeah? The important thing to remember, if you remember nothing else from what I'm telling you here, is that when you think about what digital technologies can do and why you should think about them, realize this one thing. The value to your organization is about this piece on the green square. How it enables you to coordinate resources more efficiently. When you look at this picture and these 4 ideas, we're just looking at different kinds of resources. On the left, it's resources that we control ourselves in our organization. On the right, it's resources that we don't control. They're resources that our customers have or the market has. When we look at the top of this quadrant, we're looking at resources that are about people and their knowledge and their intellectual property. And when we're looking at the bottom, we're looking at tangible assets, products, infrastructure, processes, and so on. They're all part of the same picture. And the value of what technology now brings, a real strategic view of technology, the value that brings now is in making bridges between these different views, linking them all together, because unless you can do that, you can't really get very far. For example, your CMO can say, yeah, we want to do omni-channel service delivery. We want to have cool mobile apps. We want to personalize our website. We want to do customer journey mapping and create personas and do, lots of user research and really think about personas. Yeah, that's great. But you know what? If that's all you do, then all you're doing is making like fancier promises to your customers that you will not be able to keep. Unless you really link that into how your employees work and how your operations work, for example, you won't really get anywhere. So this is the value, strategically, of technology now in corporations, in companies, is how do we link these different views together? Now, I'm just going to change a little bit. I don't know if any of you have seen anything like this. So I don't have a Tesla. I wish I did. But I know some people who do, and I try not to be too jealous of them. This is the screen that you get if you own a Tesla, and there is an over-the-air update to your Tesla. Did you know this about Tesla cars? They update themselves over the air. Yeah, so like a phone, when it says it's time for an upgrade, your car does this. And it says, just like on an Apple or a Samsung phone or something, it says, oh, look, there's a new version of the OS. When do you want to install it? And by the way, don't be driving when you do this. It says at the bottom. There's the little triangle, yeah. Just make sure you're still, don't move. And they say, of course, do it at night. So people get excited about smart fridges. And as I said, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen people talk about smart fridges since 1999. Smart fridges is a horrible idea, and it was a horrible idea in 1999. This, however, is really, really interesting. Yeah? This is actually a super example of a really, really profound change that's happening now. Another reason why this is not going away. In the first wave of digital technology, we called it many things, and e-commerce was, of course, the biggest part of what we were really seeing. And that was really about us creating digital experiences around things we were used to doing. So like shopping. So instead of going to the shops, you do it online. Instead of reading a newspaper, you would look at a website. Now we're seeing a new wave. And this is where physical things start to become more digital. So things that we used to experience with digital products, like over-the-air updates to your software, yeah, are now also happening in physical products. So we've had a move from things we used to do on paper or in person, walking around, we now do online. Now we're seeing behaviors that we saw online in the e-commerce era now coming into the physical world. Yeah? This is really, really profound. And this is another reason why this is not going away. We're seeing it more and more examples of digital and physical Very hard to really separate the two. So, there are three important things on this chart. So, as I said, I spend a lot of time doing workshops with CIOs, CTOs, chief digital officers. And here's some quotes that we had over the last few months from these guys. And I'm going to call out a couple of examples. So, we need test and learn platforms. So this person was actually from an insurance company, and what he was telling me was they know they need to move faster, and they want to embrace this kind of lean startup idea of rather than doing lots of planning and design, they want to have an idea, they want to prototype, they want to try, test, see what works. If it works, super. Improve it, scale it, make it robust. If it doesn't work, just throw it away. Yeah? This is a really interesting one. We need bridging strategies. We need to build bridges between our innovation labs, where we have this experimental philosophy, and our operations, where we really need to be much more industrial, if you like. But how do we can't just think of those as separate things, and that's, in fact, this idea of bimodal IT, which you may have heard if you're a Gartner customer, for example, they talk about bimodal IT, fast IT, slow IT. And what we heard a few times was actually, yeah, that's okay, but you can't just have these things like completely separate because they need to talk. So how do we build strategies and platforms that give us these bridges? Yeah? So this is the first interesting thing. People now, across many industries, here's examples from media, from insurance, from retail, from travel and transport, and utilities as well. Yeah, water companies, electric companies. So that's the other second thing to take away. The people saying this are not the people who used to really be right at the front of IT spending 10, 15 years ago, and that was banks and telecoms companies mostly. Yeah, those companies are still moving fast and trying hard, but all these quotes are from people you would not expect really to be innovators with technology. Utilities, media, retail, travel and transport, insurance. So that's the second thing. We're seeing innovation and a desire to be more sophisticated coming from new places, absolutely. And the second thing is when we ask, who is inspiring you today? 10 or 15 years ago, when we ask who is really driving your agenda, where do you get your technology ideas and architecture visions from, they'd say IBM, Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, maybe Teradata or something like that. Not now. So there's the three interesting things. Some very sophisticated people asking very hard questions. Not in the places we used to see those people, and also where they get their inspiration from is very different. So lots of change. And really the last thing to say is that those sophisticated people we speak to realize that when they think about digital technology, it's not just about the destination of digital. So when I say the destination, we talk about 4 different internets. We talk about how the internet is changing application platforms through the cloud. We talk about how the internet is changing connections between people through social tools and social networks. We talk about Internet of personal devices, where we're connecting with our mobiles on the move. And we talk about Internet of infrastructure. Other people talk about the IoT, the Internet of Things. It's not just about the destination, where we're going. It's also about how we get there. And this is the piece underneath, really. It's about when you look at the companies really, really doing digital transformation and moving fast, the way they change has changed. It's not only about where they're going, but when they change differently. And they use digital technologies to change differently. They use digital technologies to get data from the systems and the platforms they use and build, and they use that data to understand where the problems are and experiment and change faster. So you have this agility you have data and instrumentation, and you put them together, and you create the ability to move much faster and experiment better, but with real confidence and with real data. And this is something that not many people have really done at speed before. Yeah, of course, we have ideas of continuous improvement, but this is really at a different level. Okay. So, hopefully that has set the stage. Now what I want to do is say, okay, yeah, this is all fine. This is what we're hearing about where people are trying to go, how they're trying to change. But what about BPM? Why is this guy here at BPMCon talking to me about all this stuff? Well, what we find, particularly in established companies, is that they have some super ideas about, for example, how do we deliver great customer experiences? Now think about the last time you had a really super experience with a company, when you were really impressed by how they actually delivered a modern service. If you really think about that, the chances are that one big piece of what happened was how they were able to create an integrated experience. So maybe if you spoke to some different people in that organization, they didn't ask you to give the same information over again, but they actually, everything was joined up, yeah? Maybe if you talked to somebody on the phone and then you went to a website, the experiences were synchronized. So when we're talking about great customer experiences, we're actually talking about how do we integrate knowledge, services, people, and do that in a way that works across channels, mobile, social platforms, websites, call center, stores, and so on. So great experiences need that foundation of integration. And I mean, when I say integration, I don't mean necessarily like software integration, although that's the foundation. I mean really business and service integration. But established companies have actually spent 15 years going in completely the opposite direction. Not integrating, but dispersing. They've created offshore service centers. They've outsourced. They're using more and more partners in more and more locations around the world. They're creating whole networks of partnerships. So really, when you look at operations, particularly in established companies, people have actually been pushing those operations out across multiple different business units, companies, and so on. So how do you create a better experience, which is maybe more integrated from a business point of view, when your operations are actually completely spread out, and maybe even more so every day? This is really what BPM is all about, I think, in this context. So one of our workshop participants was from General Electric, obviously huge company. And he was one of their senior architects. And I stole the idea from him, so I'm a consultant, I steal my ideas from everybody, of course. So, but he had this term. He said, what we've realized is that BPM for us is about a digital thread. So think about stitching. How do we create a digital thread that runs through our services? And I thought, yeah, that's a super way to think about it. I already had this picture, but he gave me the idea of the digital thread. And it's really about how do we create a platform in our business that enables us to share knowledge, coordinate work from the front edge of our organization, yeah, whether that's in the call center, in a store, on the website, in a physical location of some other kind, on a mobile app. How do we create a platform that we can share knowledge, we can coordinate the work, the tasks, the actions, and we can do that in a way that flows seamlessly from the front edge to all the way through to our partners and our shared services centers and our operations around the world. Because, again, you're coming back to that idea of you can't just talk about the marketing piece. You can't just talk about how you make your website more responsive or more persona-driven or personalized. You have to link it into the way you operate and the way your people get work done. If you can't make those links, then really you're not going to get very far. And that's what this digital thread idea is about. And really, BPM technology, of course, it's different for every organization, but when I look widely across organizations, really this is where BPM becomes really interesting in a broader sense. So yeah, of course, it's interesting for particular applications. But when you look at its value as a strategy, it's really about how it helps you create these digital threads. And it does this in 3 ways. It really helps you coordinate work between people and systems, coordinate data sharing, data transformation, integration, and also share knowledge across teams of people so that the right work gets done at the right time, and you can do that at scale. It makes it easy because good technology like this really use models. It uses visual models to enable different groups of people to work together. And if we use models in the right way, we're able to change more effectively because we have more confidence about what we're changing. And lastly, this is the super important bit as well that people sometimes forget, is that it also gives you this instrumentation. It enables you to track and manage the performance, not of your server or of your database, but of your process. So you can see where things are going well, where things are going badly, and you can actually make improvements based on that. Now, there is no other technology, at least in 20 years, if there is one, I haven't seen it, there's no other technology type that gives you this combination of coordinating work and sharing knowledge at scale, enabling you to make changes easily, and importantly also really gives you that data, that insight, as part of the same platform. You don't have to do a whole lot of extra stuff. It's all in the same platform. And if you think back, let's see if the back button works. Somebody once told me you should never go back in a presentation. I think that's very 20th century. So I'm, being non-linear. So think back to this slide here. Think particularly to this right-hand piece. That's actually what we're talking about, right? If we have real insight into how things are working, and we have a system that enables us to be agile, and I don't mean necessarily agile with a capital A, I just mean a system and an environment where we can change more easily, then we are really onto something. And this is where BPM fits into the picture as well. So. There's one other piece to it, though. And I apologize here, I'm using an American example, and this is just because the American data is easier to find. But we're certainly seeing it across different markets in Europe as well. On this chart on the left, so the S&P 500, here it says S&P 500, that's in America, that is the index of the top 500 public companies, yeah? So they're stocks. Now, this was an analysis that was done where they looked at the top 500 companies together, and they looked at, okay, inside all their financial statements, how do they value themselves? Where does the value come from in these 500 companies? Is it tangible value? So is it, let's say, machinery? or materials, raw materials, or is it tools, or is it buildings? There's tangible things, vehicles, things like that. Or is it intangible things? Knowledge, intellectual property. Now, I hope you can see there's been a big change. 1975, over 80% of the value was in physical things. So the way that these companies valued themselves was by the value of the physical things they had in the top 500 companies. Now it's flipped almost completely. Now over 80% of that value is actually knowledge. So this presents us with a bit of a challenge. Because if 80% of the value of companies, and it's, as I say, our view is that it's similar in Europe as well, knowledge is really, really, really important. And it's, of course, everybody says it. Yeah, we're a knowledge company. Yeah, but do you behave like a knowledge company? Do you really value knowledge? How do you manage knowledge? How do you make sure that knowledge is really shared in a way so that it's, because knowledge just by itself, oh look, here's a bucket of knowledge. Look, fantastic. It doesn't mean anything. We have to take that knowledge and apply it every day, and we have to make sure the best knowledge gets applied in the best way every day. How do we do that? Most companies are terrible at this. And my company is also, has some problems, and we really are a knowledge company. It's so often not really thought about, and what makes it even harder now is that when we then look at how companies in different sectors, particularly large companies, we look at the different employment patterns in those different companies, in different places. So, for example, if we look at a company that runs a call center, where do you think, and this is not every company, but most companies, where do you think the most junior people who have spent the least time in the company, where do you think they work? In the call center. When you look at the people who change their jobs most often, where do they work? Well, it's probably in the call center, or maybe it's in the retail store, if it's a retail company. Where are the people who are paid the least? Well, you can probably guess. It's a problem, because let's come back to this picture. Lots of companies say, yeah, we're all about the customer experience. Okay, so when we look at the people who face customers every day, yeah, it's typically the people who are paid the least, who have been there the least amount of time and who change the job most often. But we don't manage knowledge very well either. So how do we really expect to deliver a super customer experience? Yeah, and so we can argue about politics and economic policy and all these big things, of course, but what can individual companies do about it? Yeah, well, actually, what we can do is use platforms that really allow us to share knowledge and coordinate work better, so that everybody has a better idea about how to get things done the right way every time. Yeah? Because if new people are coming into my company all the time, I don't know how long they're going to stay, I'd better make sure they're effective really quickly. I don't want to have to train them for like 8 weeks on how we deal with a particular situation. I want to give them tools so that they understand the work very, very quickly, and they understand how to get the work done very, very quickly. And they are assisted with tools, so they do it the right way. So again, platforms to manage knowledge, share knowledge, coordinate work at scale in different parts of an organization. That sounds to me like BPM. So hopefully this has given you a couple of different ideas about why BPM is interesting. All right. So now I want to talk a bit about how this is maybe different from what we've seen before. And this next piece is something I sometimes spend half a day on, so I'll go through it very quickly, and hopefully it will still make sense. The world of automation, and we're part of this world when we talk about BPM, really, in some sense, we are talking about automation of work. Maybe not automation of tasks, maybe automation of tasks, but maybe not, but at least we're automating the way that work flows around an organization and the way that systems negotiate with each other, pass data around, and so on. And this world of automation is changing. A lot of the time, people don't really see this because actually it's a very long change, a long path. Actually, it goes back over 200 years. So we had the first automation in the workplace in 1785. It was a flour mill, and it was not a success. Actually, lots of people got injured when machines exploded. But nevertheless, it was the first time we tried this. What's been happening, though, as we've gone through the first automated telephone switchboard is now actually we started to introduce learning systems, actually like nearly 60 years ago. Yeah? So the first self-learning program was actually invented by a guy from IBM, and it was the chess playing program, funnily enough. Of course, it was very rudimentary, but it was the first time that a program had been written that actually had elements of learning in it. It's taken us 60 years, but now we are reaching a tipping point where actually we're shifting the way that we interact and that companies interact with their systems. And I want you to think about it like this. For 200 years, we have put automation into businesses. And the way we've done this is by making people fit around systems. Yeah? The system automates something, and we change the environment so that the machine can work. Yeah? We have, in a factory, of course, we have very clear layouts and setup in the factory environment. We have very, very constrained ways that the space is used. We're very precise about how the environment is configured, because that's how we make the system work. We as people have to change the way we want to behave to serve the system. But it's really now changing, and it's changing quite fast. Now what we are seeing is a shift where systems are able to change the way they behave to fit around how we want to work. Yeah? And it's been quite a slow change, but it's really now reaching a tipping point where we don't make the environment fit around the system, we make the system fit around our environment and how we want to work. And we're seeing this in two levels. We're seeing it in the way that systems interact with us. So how many of you have heard of bots? Yeah? Chatbots and things like that? A few people? Yeah? Well, many of them are still very basic, but actually it's improving very, very quickly. And when you look at things like Siri, Cortana, you look at Amazon's Echo and the other systems built around that, you look around the bot technologies that are going into things like Facebook, these are all really built around natural language processing, the ability for these automated systems to have conversations with people. And some of this is actually becoming quite good. I had the strange experience the other day of, I was trying to arrange a meeting with somebody in California, and they said, oh, yeah, my assistant Amy will organize that for you. And then I got an email from Amy, and I went through this whole process, and it was all fine. And then I happened to be talking to this guy when we met, and I said, oh, your assistant Amy was super helpful. He said, yeah, Amy's a bot. Software program. And you can go out and find this stuff. It's actually super cheap. You can sign up to these services for like $5 a month. A cloud-based service that will schedule appointments in your calendar. And it will actually have email conversations with people who want to have meetings with you. So I say, I'm sorry, I can't do that time, Amy. And Amy comes back and says, Okay, fine. Well, actually, Dave has slots. He also has time next week at 9. Is that okay for you? Oh, no, sorry, I'm going to be on holiday. Okay, well, actually, what about the 25th? Yeah? I had no idea. No idea. And so this kind of stuff is really happening. And we're also seeing at the level underneath this, in terms of insights and analytics, we're seeing more and more machine learning being used to drive predictions. So whereas we used to use analytics on data from a month ago, from a quarter ago, now we're applying it right now, and we're using machine learning to be better at predicting, making recommendations. So we're seeing that these technologies are changing the way we interact with systems. Systems are becoming smarter, they're becoming more natural, they're actually making recommendations to us about how we should do our work, which document to look at, which colleague to work with, what step to do next, based on the context. So now we have software and people working together to get work done. Very, very different. Okay. We're also seeing a shift in BPM because more and more people want workflow to come to where we want to do the work. So 10 years ago, when we implemented systems, often we would just create a new UI with a task list and so on, and we would actually go to the system to go through our tasks. Actually now, we're seeing more and more organizations. In fact, most organizations who use BPM, they may use the BPM's own UI for some things, but much of the time, sometimes most of the time, they actually want to use different UIs. They want to bring the coordination, the workflow, into systems that people already use, the new workplace they already want. So I've come across 3 companies recently who are actually integrating their BPM systems into Slack, so that the Slack messaging system is now the front end. When you put all this together, there's something really big going on here. And I talk about the new BPM. And when you look at mobile technologies, when you look at analytics and bots and new recommendation systems, when you look at social technologies, when you look at cloud, and you put all that together, and this is, if you like, the destination of digital, when you put that all together and you think about work and the way that work happens, this presents you a massive opportunity. Also a challenge, of course, but an opportunity to think again about how work gets done. We think about how work gets done. We think about answering certain questions, right? What work needs to get done here? Who needs to do the work? When do they need to do the work? In what order? Where do they need to do it? Do they need to do it in the office, sitting behind a terminal? Maybe not. Why do they do it? Yeah, for who? Who do they do the work for? And how do they do it? When you look at the destination of digital, like we've just talked about some of the changes there, there's an opportunity here to basically start again with these questions and say, actually, have we got all of our assumptions right? The chances are no, you haven't. The chances are that at least one of these questions, if you think about it again, you can come up with ways to redesign the way your company delivers value, and that can have huge potential. So what does this mean, lastly, for the platforms we want? There's a few key things. I think if you're looking for a BPM platform today, and you want to build these digital threads, yeah, and you want to be open to changes in the ways that technologies are used in work and in business, you need to look for some things. And here's some of the key things you need to look for. To support agility, you need systems that use models, visual models, to help you specify behavior. And you really need platforms that fit into the ways, the workflows. When I say workflows here, I mean like the software lifecycle, the way that devs and testing guys and ops guys, how they work, how they actually get things done. So more and more clients I talk to are expecting that their BPM platforms fit into a modern DevOps environment. Yeah, modern patterns and workflows for actually building technology systems. Openness. We need platforms that give us different choices about how we want to package and actually deploy applications, because it's a very uncertain world, and these platforms, these target environments are changing all the time. Measurability. We need platforms that give us choices about how we get data out and use data. Yeah? We don't want a system that forces us to use a particular way of getting data and getting insight out of the platform. Collaboration. And when I say collaboration here, I mean collaboration between different groups in your organization or in your customer's organization. So, yeah, business analysts, subject matter experts, maybe even customers, or certainly maybe call center workers, developers, designers. How do we bring them together? We need tools that really help them collaborate and share their ideas effectively. It's no good for us to just go around with clipboards and say, okay, so what are your requirements? And write them all down and then say, okay, I'll see you in 2 years. And then, bang, 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 bang. That doesn't work. Of course, we know that. So the models are great, but actually we need tools that also help us work with these models in friendly, easy ways. And lastly, augmentation. I believe if you're not already looking at how we can use smart software in the way we get work done, so agents, bots, recommendation engines, if you're not already looking at that now, you will be looking at it in the next 2 years. And we want to build future-proof systems. So you need to have this on your radar, at least. And that means you need to be prepared to think about different ways of implementing this technology. It comes back to the packaging choice. Flexibility in how we take what we build, and then we can integrate it with other things. Again, if we have a closed, monolithic, proprietary system, that's a problem. Yeah? So these are all things we need to look for from the new BPM. And yeah, just think about it like this, right? So these are all examples of food. You've heard of, there's this thing called molecular gastronomy, where chefs take ideas, take food, and they kind of essentially chemically change it. So it still tastes like the food, but it's completely different. So in the middle, that's transparent ravioli. What a crazy idea that is. I'm only showing you this because this is kind of how we need to think of modern systems. We need to have the capabilities in there, but we need to be open about new ways of deploying those capabilities, accessing them, integrating them, and delivering them. We should be prepared to make new assumptions or change our assumptions about how these systems should always work, because we live in a very uncertain age. So, thank you very much. I hope that's been useful, and I wish you a very, very productive day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. Are there any questions to Neil? We need the microphone. Okay.
Oh, there's a gentleman in the middle. Yeah. I will be around also for some time today, so if you want to talk another time as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
okay.
Let's ask Amy. Will there be Amy for BPM in the next 10 years?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah?
Yeah. So I think in the next year.
Next year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And say, I need a process for my insurance company, and then you build a process? Or?
Not necessarily in that way, but certainly in terms of how tasks are presented to us.
Okay.
Yeah? I need to deal with this claim.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, this claim, actually, when we looked at claims like this before, we found that there's commonly a problem with fraud. And the fraud is particularly around this kind of, if you look at this kind of data, this is where you'll spot the fraud, probably. So a system that actually helps you understand the best action. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Oh, we have a question.
Thank you. My name is Margarete Padisch, and I work at a very conservative company, Hamburg Süd. It's a shipping company, and as you can imagine, I can very much relate to what you told about the finance sector. And my question is, You talked about BPM and workflows and very flexible environments, and this is really interesting, but when you look at everyday life in a big company like the shipping company is, you work with people and departments very much focused on what they actually have to do within their little team. So the abstract thinking and process-wise thinking is not there, and I would like to hear from you, what have you developed together with COOs or CMOs? What are your experience with that problem? Because work environment will change, obviously, as we heard from you today.
Yeah, so thank you very much. That's a super question, and of course, it is also quite common to come across these conservative companies. They're everywhere, but just to come back quickly, so at the beginning I was sharing some quotes from companies, and so just to give you one example, one of the companies we worked with is a water utility company. Yeah, so they provide water services to companies to homes in the UK, in just one part of the UK. Now, historically, you would think a water utility company, you know, are they technology innovators? No, of course not. But this water company, actually 3 years ago, started to run hackathons. Water company running hackathons. I mean, what a crazy idea. Now, of course, so all I'm saying there is that it is possible, but of course, it doesn't happen just by magic. And the challenge for them was how to get permission to try some new things. And it was, so of course, there had to be real pressure from the top as well, from senior management, or permission from senior management to allow these experiments to happen. And really, it was a collaboration between very senior management, an IT director who was prepared to try some new ideas, and then actually some external people who came in and helped to bring in some people from outside to really get the competition and the experiments happening. I have to say it's very hard unless you can convince somebody senior, but it doesn't have to be a big journey. Companies can start with just 1 or 2 people and spending just maybe a few thousand euros, maybe 5,000, 10,000 euros to try things. And so to start with, the key is to have a discussion where we say, look, what if we took, let's say, 0.5% of our IT budget, and we allowed, within that 0.5% us to have some different rules. Yeah? So we don't have to go through the same processes. We don't have to have the same approvals in terms of how we spend the money. Very small amounts. Let's see what we can do with that, and let's see where we can go with that. I have some great ideas. We can get some people in. It can start very small, but it does need a new conversation to happen about the way things get done, and to be open to experimenting. It's not easy, though, I have to say. It's not easy.
Okay. Yeah, further questions? Okay, then, again, thank you. No?
Thank you
very
much.
Neil.
Thank you.